St. Louis, the NFL, and the Los Angeles Rams are currently entangled in one of the biggest lawsuits in NFL history. And the NFL is currently at risk of losing billions of dollars to the city of St. Louis in court. And yet none of the national or major media outlets that are connected to the NFL are covering this case. One of the only publications who is covering this case is Pro Football Talk, in particular Mike Florio, who is a longtime journalist at ProFootballTalk.com. Many of you who are watching this video have probably noticed an uptick in coverage in these events lately on social media and Twitter in particular, and have come across this video by searching the topic or simply stumbling upon it. And since not a lot of people in the national media or here on YouTube have made an effort to go in detail on the topic, I am here today to tell you guys the story. My name is Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com, and today I'm going to tell you why this St. Louis NFL lawsuit is such a big deal. One person I know personally who has dabbled into this subject is Urinating Tree, who is a popular NFL YouTuber here on YouTube. I'm sure a lot of you know who he is. I actually had him on my podcast before, and we talked about Stan Kroenke, NFL, the Rams, and all of that stuff for a little bit before. But even Urinating Tree is someone who has an outsider looking in perspective, looking upon this Rams case. And since he made his Rams lolcow video a few years ago, a lot has happened in the courts behind the scenes that has not been shared. I am a lifelong Kansas City Chiefs fan, but I am based in St. Louis and always followed the Rams when they were here in St. Louis. So I watched everything happen up close, and I supported the Rams when they were here, mostly because they were the local team as well, and I still like to see them do good, even if my team, the Kansas City Chiefs, were also doing good. Also because the I-70 rivalry between Kansas City and St. Louis was great for the sport, and it's great in all sports. But with all that being said, let's dive into where this feud between St. Louis and the NFL and the Los Angeles Rams all began. Let's rewind all the way back to 2014, back when rumors of the St. Louis Rams moving to Los Angeles really started to come alive. The first alarm bell came when Rams owner Stan Kroenke bought 60 acres of land in Inglewood, California on January 30th, 2014. An ESPN article reporting on the situation said, according to Roger Goodell, the NFL commissioner, he had no knowledge of the land purchase being made to become the future home of an NFL team/stadium. Furthermore, Rams COO and Kroenke's right-hand man, Kevin Demoff, went on the radio in 101 ESPN in St. Louis and told everyone, quote-unquote, there's nothing to hide regarding Stan's purchase of land in LA, and said there were no plans to move the team at all. Stan Kroenke himself also said the same thing and doubled down several times. Truly, the relocation rumors go all the way back to when Stan originally bought the team after Georgia Frontiere died. Shad Khan, who is now the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, was looking to purchase the St. Louis Rams before Kroenke put in his bid last second and purchased the team. From that day on, there were always talks that the Rams could potentially move, even though Kroenke is a St. Louis native, and Kroenke even used that bit in public press conferences, stating he would do everything he could to keep the Rams in St. Louis and keep them in the place that he grew up. Kroenke and the Rams organization would continue to dangle this bullshit in front of the city of St. Louis and its fans until it finally applied for relocation in 2016. In Kroenke and the Rams' relocation proposal, they took a massive shit over the city of St. Louis, stating no NFL club would be interested in the RSA's new St. Louis stadium. The application reads, any NFL club that signs on to this proposal in St. Louis will be well on the road to financial ruin, and the league will be harmed. According to a study cited by the Rams, St. Louis, which is also home to MLB's Cardinals and the NHL's Blues, ranks 61st out of 64 major cities in recent economic growth and has the lowest population growth of any major U.S. city since 2008. In bold letters, the application says San Diego and Oakland are substantially stronger markets than the city of St. Louis. The St. Louis Stadium Task Force, which we'll get into more in a little bit, quickly offered a dissenting opinion according to this ESPN article. The Rams' assessment of their experience in St. Louis after 21 seasons of remarkable support by fans, businesses, and the community is inaccurate and extremely disappointing, the task force said in a statement. We will remain in contact with league officials and team owners as appropriate in the days ahead of the meeting in Houston. Otherwise, nothing has changed. We have a spectacular stadium proposal that delivers the certainty of the NFL has asked for, and we are and will continue to be an excellent home for the St. Louis Rams. Before going any further, let's dive a little bit into why the Rams' case for leaving St. Louis is shitty at best. First of all, the The application for relocation references the St. Louis Cardinals and the St. Louis Blues, the other two major sports teams in the city of St. Louis. Two teams with remarkable attendance and full support of the city of St. Louis. Yet the Rams sit here and make excuses for everyone else besides themselves for the lack of attendance and revenue. Speaking of the St. Louis Cardinals specifically, they've ranked in the top 5 of home game attendance 19 times out of the last 20 years. St. Louis Rams also consistently sold out back in the early 2000s when the greatest show on turf was alive and the team was a Super Bowl contender. St. Louis has shown that if you have a successful organization that the fans will show up. If you build it, they will come. Can you really blame fans for not showing up after the team had the worst 5-year stretch in NFL history and had a record of 49, 110-1 in a 160-game stretch? It's also no coincidence the team started a steep decline right as Kroenke took ownership. While it's unlikely that us fans will ever know what was discussed behind closed doors in St. Louis during the offseason and what the Rams' approach was to free agency and the draft, it sure does seem like the organization willingly made zero effort to make the team better. One of the moves that I always point to when discussing this topic is how the St. Louis Rams consistently held on to failed head coach Jeff Fisher in the years leading up to when they left. It was clear Jeff Fisher was just a placeholder until they finally got what they wanted through the relocation process. And then, when the Los Angeles Rams became a real thing, Fisher was quickly fired. It's also evident that Kroenke didn't give a damn about the team, especially when they were still in St. Louis. In fact, former Rams cornerback Janoris Jenkins went on Mike Florio's show of Pro Football Talk to discuss firsthand what it was like having Stan Kroenke as an owner while he was with St. Louis. It's a big difference, to be honest with you, Jenkins said. Just being here in New York and seeing GM Jerry Reese every day at practice, it just motivates me because I never seen that in St. Louis. It was always the coaches, not the owners, coming around to see the players. It was always, don't speak to Stan Kroenke. When I was in St. Louis to here in New York, everybody is everybody. Everybody is treated the same. The owner just walks around and communicates with you and gives you a reason to play football. To know that you're playing for someone that is always around and always cares that you can communicate with, I felt I was just playing for my teammates and my coaches. I never seen the owner. Once again, they told us not to speak to him when he came around, and I just felt like that I wasn't comfortable there, Jenkins said. They said if you ever see Stan come around the facility, don't speak to him. Once I heard that my rookie year, I just knew I wasn't going to be comfortable, because when he came around, it was like everybody better be straightforward. Nobody better not look at him. It was like kind of crazy. Now, remember that task force that I mentioned earlier that St. Louis assembled in order to try and keep the Rams? Well, this task force was handpicked by Missouri governor at the time, Jay Nixon. Nixon appointed Anheuser-Busch president Dave Peacock and Clayton attorney Robert Blitz to lead the charge on this. This said task force ended up spending $16.2 million to try and keep the Rams in St. Louis. They came up with a beautiful riverfront stadium plan that would be right next to the Stan Musial Bridge in St. Louis and would feature new video boards, new premium seating options. It would seat thousands more than the old Edward Jones Dome and would have a beautiful view of the river. The stadium had an estimated cost of $1.1 billion, but STL offered to pitch in $150 million of its own funding. But they would be asking for $300 million from the NFL as a loan, and then the rest would be paid off by Rams owner Stan Kroenke. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell would write back to St. Louis in the stadium task force saying that the contribution of $300 million would be fundamentally inconsistent with the NFL's program of stadium financing, and he called St. Louis's stadium plan inadequate. This is a very important piece of information that will come into play later. The stadium would also be coming with a incredible naming rights deal with National Car Rental that would be one of the top naming rights deals in all of sports. The fact of the matter is here that St. Louis offered everything and then some to the Rams and the NFL to try to get the Rams to stay. Meanwhile, the city of Los Angeles was offering nothing in city funding in order to try to get the Rams to come to Los Angeles for that stadium. Rams owner Stan Kroenke would also stiff-arm the city of St. Louis's plan and offer to pay for his new stadium completely out of pocket. And in the end, ultimately, the Rams relocated back to Los Angeles from St. Louis in 2016 when Stan Kroenke received votes from 30 of the 32 NFL owners to move the team back to California. Leading up to the day of the vote, though, it was rumored that the favored plan would be to move the Raiders and the Chargers in a joint stadium in Carson, California. But Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones urged Kroenke to keep his efforts to get the Rams to move to Los Angeles and created a secret ballot behind closed doors with the owners where they overwhelmingly supported Kroenke's plan to move to Los Angeles in the end. From that day on, St. Louis would seek to sue the NFL, the Los Angeles Rams, and Stan Kroenke along with several other NFL owners including Jerry Jones. St. Louis's main premise for suing the NFL and the Los Angeles Rams for this relocation ordeal was that the NFL ignored its own relocation guidelines in order to screw over St. Louis and benefit financially from the Rams' move to Los Angeles. And if you read from the NFL's own relocation guidelines, which I will in a second here, you will notice that the NFL and the Rams broke almost every guideline listed in this document. Without further ado, here is the NFL's relocation guidelines from the time. Article 8.5 of the NFL Constitution and bylaws vests in the Commissioner the authority to interpret and from time to time establish policy and procedure and respect the provisions of the Constitution and bylaws, and in any enforcement thereof. Set forth below are policy and procedures to apply to future league consideration pursuant to Section 4.3 of the Constitution and bylaws of any proposed transfer of a club's home territory. Article 4.3 requires prior approval by the affirmative vote of 3/4 of the member clubs before a club may transfer its franchise or playing site to a different city, either within or outside its existing home territory. Article 4.3 confirms that each club's primary obligation to the league and to all the other members is to advance the interests of the league in its home territory. This primary obligation includes, but is not limited to, maximizing fan support, including attendance, in its home territory. Article 4.3 also confirms that no club has an entitlement to relocate simply because it perceives an opportunity for enhanced club revenues in another location. Indeed, league traditions expected to remain so. Relocation pursuant to Article 4.3 may be available. However, if a club's viability in its home territory is threatened by circumstances that cannot be remedied by diligent efforts of the club working as appropriate in conjunction with the league office, or if compelling league interests warrant a franchise relocation. Article 4.3 also reflects the league's collective judgment that unassigned franchise opportunities, including second franchise opportunities in the home territory of a member club, are owned by the league's members as a collective whole, and by definition, that no club has rights to more than a single home territory. Such collective league opportunities may be acquired by an individual club only by an assignment reflecting the consent of the league and subject to its generally applicable voting requirements. Negotiations prior to league consideration. 1. Because league policy favors stable team-community relations, clubs are obligated to work diligently and in good faith to obtain and to maintain suitable stadium facilities in their home territories, and to operate in a manner that maximizes fan support in their current home community. A club may not, however, grant exclusive negotiating rights to a community or potential stadium landlord other than one in its current home territory. 2. All clubs, at any time during their stadium negotiations, are free to seek the assistance of the league office and the stadium committee on either a formal or informal basis if, having diligently engaged in good faith efforts, a club concludes that it cannot obtain a satisfactory resolution of its stadium needs. It may inform the league office and the stadium landlord or other relevant public authorities that it has reached a stalemate in those negotiations. Obviously, the NFL did not stay true to these guidelines. They did STL no favors, even though they offered them everything they wanted. They did not negotiate with them in good faith to try and stay in St. Louis. And they did move simply for financial gain. Those are just some of the many rules that the NFL broke. Now, one thing people always point to in defense of the Rams in this scenario is that they had at least that they were able to get out of with the Edward Jones Dome in St. Louis, where the Rams used to play. The problem is, the reason St. Louis is suing the NFL and the Rams isn't because of the regrettable lease with the Edward Jones Dome. It's centered around the relocation process. Because in the aforementioned guidelines, the Rams were obligated to listen to the city of St. Louis if they made a good effort to keep their team, which they did. They poured millions of dollars into the stadium task force that was assembled to try and create a plan to keep the Rams in St. Louis. And the city of St. Louis approved $150 million of city funding towards a new stadium. And St. Louis, Missouri politicians were motivated to try and keep the Rams despite what NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell said of them. Also, remember when I told you guys to remember the fact that when the St. Louis asked the NFL for $300 million in league funding for their new stadium to keep the Rams in St. Louis, Roger Goodell said that didn't fall in line with their policies? Well, a few years later, he did a complete 180 on that statement, as the Rams Stadium that was originally supposed to be just somewhere in the ballpark of $3 billion was so over budget that the Rams asked for a $500 million loan from the NFL, in which Roger Goodell gave to them. So to call the St. Louis Stadium plan inadequate, only to give $500 million to Kroenke, whose total net worth is around $8 billion, could have paid for the whole thing himself, allow the stadium in Los Angeles to cost over $5 billion, which is now the most expensive stadium in sports history. Goodell and the NFL really dug themselves a hole. Currently, STL is seeking over billions of dollars in compensation for damages caused by the NFL and the Rams. Reading from this Bleacher Report article, Daniel Kaplan of The Athletic says the plaintiffs are seeking a slice of the value of the Los Angeles Rams, a part of team owner Stan Kroenke's real estate holdings, and a fraction of the price tag increases on the 31 other NFL teams over the past half-decade. Our experts' disclosures for damages are definitely forward-looking and not backward-looking, attorney Jim Bennett, who is representing St. Louis, said. Our damages relate to the violation of the relocation policy. The move, the relocation fee, the minimum increases in value to Mr. Kroenke, the minimum increase in value to all the other teams or defendants, the minimum increase in value to Mr. Kroenke's real estate empire, expenses that we incur based on the representations that might actually think about the new stadium. The plaintiffs said the loss of the Rams hurt the city and region and benefited the league and its owners, who received a $550 million relocation fee, the lawsuit said. Meanwhile, the value of the Rams increased by nearly $700 million. Among other damages cited by the plaintiffs in the lawsuit were city and county bond obligations totaling $360 million, the loss of more than $100 million in net proceeds, $30 million for the installation of a new playing surface and other renovations, the loss of state revenue of more than $15 million, and about $7.5 million in lost property taxes. The city said it also contributed hundreds of millions of dollars to attract and retain an NFL team over the past 20 years, the lawsuit said. The Sports Complex Authority spent more than $17 million during efforts to build a new stadium for the Rams. As court hearings proceeded, plaintiffs will be given access to data concerning the financial worth of Goodell, as well as 5 NFL owners, including Stan Kroenke, Jerry Jones, Robert Kraft, John Mara, and former Panthers owner Jerry Richardson. St. Louis would also be granted access to view text and phone call records of all the defendants. Randy Carricker, who works for the 101.1 ESPN radio station in St. Louis, covered the case and shared some damning evidence that was presented in court against the NFL. STL says NFL and Kroenke committed willful or outrageous or reckless act versus plaintiff rights. STL claims NFL kept discovery confidential. Email from Eric Grunman, I'm trying to get some terrific LA opportunities to fruition under cover of darkness. In deposition, Goodell held relocation guidelines in his hand. Was asked, are these mandatory? Replied, counselor, it says right here, they are. 2014 email from Kevin Demoff, Rams COO, to NFL says LA land story is coming out. League responds, what should we say? Demoff provides talking points that Goodell uses in Super Bowl press conference, denying he knows land purchased by Kroenke is for stadium. Peacock emailed to Demoff telling him about national car rental naming rights deal. Demoff responds with link to YouTube video that screams, F it, I'm out. NFL never intended to force Kroenke to negotiate in good faith with St. Louis. Jerry Jones admitted he urged Kroenke to move. Day after relocation vote, Rams signed contract with Jones Legends Corp. To sell PSL in luxury boxes. Kind of fishy, isn't it? And last but not least here, Ben Fredrickson of the STL Post-Dispatch said something else from STL side discovery revealed today during discussion of Rams contempt for STL, lack of good faith dealing. Day before relocation vote, Rams staffers were writing letter meant as goodbye to fans. It was referred to as AMF, an acronym for Adios, Motherfuckers. There was even a story that the day after the Rams' relocation to Los Angeles was approved, Rams COO Kevin Demoff and Rams owner Stan Kroenke hopped on a plane ride to California and joked the whole ride there about how they screwed the city of St. Louis over and got what they wanted. Since then, the Rams in the NFL have been getting slammed in court hearings and have failed in every way to stop proceedings. According to this article from Pro Football Talk of NBC Sports, the Rams in the NFL have failed in their last-ditch effort to avoid trial in Missouri over the relocation of the Los Angeles Rams. A Missouri judge denied the NFL's motion for summary judgment. Basically, what that means is that the defendant argues that there's no need for a jury to go through all the evidence, and that based on undisputed facts, given the applicable law, require a victory for the defense. Obviously, this did not work. Judge McGraw found that sufficient evidence exists to support a verdict on each of the various claims made by the St. Louis plaintiffs: breach of contract arising from the NFL's relocation policy, unjust enrichment at the expense of the plaintiffs, fraud, and tortious interference. So, without settlement to this point, the NFL and the Rams will stand trial in front of a jury, likely in January of 2022. The Rams and the NFL even tried to get the trial moved out of St. Louis, Missouri, and to somewhere else to make it more fair. That did not work either. At this point in the video, I want to discuss what could potentially happen to the NFL and the Rams. Obviously, there's scenario number one, where St. Louis could win their trial and sue the Rams in the NFL for billions of dollars, which could significantly hurt the NFL. Like, people aren't talking at all about how serious this is. It's not getting that much coverage. Like, the NFL is in serious trouble and could lose some serious value. Or the NFL could be ordered or could offer to settle the case by offering St. Louis an expansion team or another relocation team. While many fans are in favor of this idea, I personally just don't see it happening. The NFL doesn't want to deal with St. Louis anymore, and St. Louis doesn't want to deal with the NFL anymore. The city of St. Louis has already lost 2 NFL teams over the last 50 years, in both the Arizona Football Cardinals, who used to be in St. Louis and played in the same stadium as the St. Louis Baseball Cardinals, and now the St. Louis Rams, who obviously moved not that long ago. Although I personally would love to see football come back to St. Louis. St. Louis accepting another team from the NFL would be like moving back into the same house that your wife you just divorced is still living in. It just doesn't make sense, and it's not going to work. So really what you're looking at here is St. Louis going for broke. They want to take every penny that they can out of the NFL and out of Stan Kroenke's pockets. Because Kevin Demoff, Stan Kroenke, and the NFL kept telling the city of St. Louis, if you do this, and you do that, and you give us this, and you listen to us when we say that, then you'll have a pretty good chance to keep your team. And they did all of it, and they still took their team away. That pretty much sums up where we're at in this STL NFL lawsuit. And while nothing that I'm going to talk about for the rest of this video will be directly affecting what's going on in court right now, I feel the need to share this information with you guys about Stan Kroenke, the person who he is, as well as his inner circle and how they played a part in all of this. They simply don't deserve success and deserve everything coming to them. To further prove that the St. Louis Rams never cared about the team and its success when they were here, I found this story from the St. Louis Business Journal that details an event involving Rams COO Kevin Demoff during one of the Rams' last seasons in St. Louis. Check it out. Demoff even used the LA Stadium project as a distraction after quarterback Sam Bradford tore his ACL for the second straight year during a 2014 preseason game in Cleveland. Demoff jumped on a plane the next morning for San Francisco for a meeting about stadium development at the Hollywood Park site in Inglewood. Because the Rams season was about to be a train wreck, quote-unquote, Demoff welcomed the opportunity to focus on something else. The Rams went 6-10 in 2014 and finished their St. Louis tenure with a 7-9 campaign in the last season. Now let's focus on all the stuff Stan Kroenke has done. This is my favorite part of this video. So for those of you that don't know, Stan Kroenke is an owner of several major sports franchises, including the Rams, the Arsenal Soccer Club, the Denver Nuggets, the Colorado Avalanche, as well as a few other minor teams. It's worth noting that several years back, Stan Kroenke's son, Josh Kroenke, actually took over the Colorado Avalanche and the Denver Nuggets because the NFL owner bylaw stated that Kroenke himself could not own both. Since then, both the Avalanche and the Nuggets have been doing a lot better. But as you can notice, all those teams that Kroenke owns have been god-awful over the last decade plus. Arsenal fans literally hate Stan Kroenke. He's the majority owner of that franchise. They hate him. They literally want him to die. I'm not even joking. Arsenal fans are a ruthless bunch, and they hate Stan Kroenke because he does not invest a penny back into the team. And the only reason the Rams are even somewhat decent now is because of the simple fact they moved to Los Angeles, which makes them an attractive destination for free agents, coaches, and the like. For even more evidence that Kroenke was an incompetent sports owner, especially when he was in full control of the Denver Nuggets, listen to this story back when the Carmelo Anthony saga was going down in Denver. From an ESPN.com article in 2010. Both Nuggets owner Stan Kroenke and Anthony already are well aware that they don't have a future together, sources say. That became clear to Kroenke at a reception after Anthony's July 11th wedding to Lala Vasquez in Manhattan. A series of toasts at the wedding reception initiated by New Orleans Hornets guard Chris Paul suggested Anthony leave for Denver for the New York Knicks. Paul suggested it playfully, one source said, but subsequent guests, including Knicks power forward Amari Stoudemire and Anthony's brother, Robert, made the point more forcefully. Then Kroenke stood up to give a toast and the room was filled with an awkward silence. One wedding guest said Kroenke tried to make light of the situation by suggesting Paul come to Denver, but that elicited no response. This next story about Kroenke, though, is no laughing matter. In 2016, shortly after Kroenke moved the Rams, he bought the Wagner Ranch in Texas for over $750 million. On this ranch was a handful of families that leased homes on the property. The former owner of the ranch informed Kroenke of these people who stay on the land before he sold the property to Kroenke. However, shortly after Kroenke purchased the land, he sent a letter to each resident letting them know that they were being evicted and had to be off the land by January 31st, 2017. One man named Rick Ellis owned one of the homes on this ranch, but he could not afford to move, so as a result, he committed suicide before his body was discovered a few days later. A suicide note was found in the home of Ellis's that simply read, "Stan, you took my home." Even worse, Kroenke was slammed in that same year for launching a blood sports channel in the UK that consisted of a show where people would trophy hunt for endangered species such as elephants. But Kroenke faced so much backlash for it that he eventually banned the show. Kroenke is also married into the Walton family, who owns the Walmart franchise, who is infamously known for their mistreatment of workers. So, now you know a little bit more about Stan Kroenke and who he is as a person. But all of this just goes to show you that Kroenke is a massive cancer on American sports and American people in general. Kroenke is the epitome of bad capitalism and the dictionary definition for asshole. So for those of you watching this video that have made it this far, I hope you know now why this is such a big deal and why this lawsuit needs to end in Kroenke losing almost everything that he has. And for those of you watching that are Rams fans, I highly recommend you find a new team to cheer for, because a team that is owned by someone as shitty as Stan Kroenke doesn't deserve success and doesn't deserve your money. So with all that being said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more people can find this, and make sure you check out some of my work on showmefootball.com as well as kckingdom.com. I'll see y'all later.